Hi guys, welcome to another Road Pilgrim car review, and today we are reviewing the all-new BMW 520i, which is of course the base spec car. But this car that you see behind me is actually in the launch edition. So there are some funky bits about it, some bronze bits that are going on around the car. Pretty cool, pretty nice. Screams of old money, which I kind of like. And I must also thank Performance Motors for choosing a very nice number for the test car. It says 520. So very coordinated with the car model. But in any case, we recently tested the i5, which of course shares the same body shape and general architecture. But of course, this is the petrol version. This is the 520 that we all know and we love. In fact, I myself, I drive a F10 5 Series, a 523 though. But nonetheless, this review probably holds a little bit more meaning for me than with other cars. In any case, let's jump into the review. But before we do all that, if you're a driver in Singapore and you're thinking about selling your car or consigning it for the best price possible, be sure to check out the link in the description box below, and we will be able to provide you the best possible quote and valuation for used car. In fact, if you need help with insurance renewal, we can also do that for you as well. It's free to inquire, so please check out the link. Let's go. Alright, so jumping straight into the review. In fact, it's starting to rain, so let's be quick about this. This is the exterior of the 520i, and of course, like I mentioned, this comes in the launch edition spec. So all around the car, you can see bronze bits. First bit of bronze bit is of course in the front grille, and you can't really tell right now, but this bronze grille is actually illuminated. So at night, the circumference of the grille is actually lighted up. Pretty damn cool, if you ask me. Some people say that they don't like it, but I mean, like, what's there not to like, right? It's a lighted front grille. It's pretty cool. Pretty good road presence, so to speak. But in any case, bronze front grille. You've got these special wheels as well, bronze bits on the rims, and these are 20-inch wheels as standard, front and back. And then down the side, you've got bronze bits around the windows as well, along with the new signature 5 emblem on the C-pillar, alongside the Hofmeister kink. And then you've got more bronze bits down the rear. Now, I think the car looks kind of nice right now. I'm not sure if this look is going to provide a lot of longevity down the line. But, you know, looking at the way the car is made and the way it kind of presents itself, I would say that this generation of 5 Series probably isn't the 5 Series that you'll go and buy and modify too much. It's probably a car that you probably keep stock. So in that sense, I think it has a reasonably good chance of standing the test of time in terms of appearance. So here's the rear, and I'll show you something from a little bit further out. Generally, the car feels quite large, if I'm being honest. A little bit like an older 7 Series already. But you know, when we were driving over here, I did feel that despite the size or the appearance of the size, the car does still feel quite nimble and quite unified with the driver. But a little bit more about that later on. For now, let's jump back into the car and I'll show you the interior, and then we'll continue the review from there. Alright guys, so now we are in the cabin of the new BMW 520, and because this is a launch edition spec, you do get some special bits in the car. So what special bits, you might ask? First and foremost, you see the same bronze trim that you find on the exterior components of the car. And of course, this bronze trim also extends to the door handles and the side door panel here. And actually, the dashboard inlays are different. So in the standard spec car, it's sort of a matte chrome piece that's a little bit younger, more youthful. But in the launch edition, which I think caters a little bit more to the older demographic perhaps, you do get this wood inlay, which is of course quite nice. It's not like the wood inlays of old, where it's very for lack of a better word, very old-fashioned. These are actually quite modern. They've got a nice matte finish as well. It's not the shiny lacquered over kind. So this is nice. It's got this like sort of a distressed wood finish here. It feels like it has like some sort of bronze chrome thing embedded into it as well. I must be honest, when I first got into the car, I thought the dashboard was cracked. I had to do a double take there and to make sure that it wasn't cracked. And then you also got the chrome bits or the bronze bits along the steering wheel right here. Personally, I kind of like it. I kind of like the launch edition. It feels a little bit more old money in my opinion, which I think it's a very luxurious thing. Oh wait, actually there are more bronze bits. So around the center console here, there's bronze bits. The drive selector here has bronze bits, and even the volume wheel has bronze bits. Okay, but anyway, enough about that. Enough about bronze bits. Okay, the steering wheel that you find on this car is actually different from the i5 that we reviewed earlier, because that is an M edition or M Sport trim. This one's just a regular one, so it is sort of flat bottom. In fact, it's flat topped as well. And I don't know what you would call these. Two spoke? I don't know. Two spoke, yeah. But basically, there's no third spoke at the bottom here, so not really like gunning for the whole sporty look per se. It's a little bit more luxurious. Reminds me of the S-Class, which I think was the first to utilize a steering wheel like that, as far as modern cars go, of course. Around the rest of the car, very, very good level of build quality. Absolutely immense. You can't, not a creak, not a sound. And that, I think, is one of the hallmarks of a BMW as well, because build quality has always been solid. Absolutely love that about the car. In terms of the light strips, aircon vents, these are sort of inherited from the 7 Series that was launched last year. So what you get, you don't have any physical, or you don't have visible aircon vents anymore. These are sort of like invisible, hidden behind, and they're controllable through these little rubber movable things here. So that's quite cool. It might actually still be easier to adjust your aircon vents using a physical aircon vent, but these aren't too difficult to use either, and they're definitely way better than those aircon vent controls that you have to use the infotainment unit and like try to like virtually point it at you. I think those are terrible. But these are okay. These are usable. As I was driving, I needed to adjust the aircon vent to myself a little bit, and I was able to do it without too much of an effort. Now, rest of the car, let's go through that. The infotainment unit that you see is actually also updated. So this is the latest integrated curve display. In terms of the hardware, it looks pretty much the same as the one that runs OS 8, but this runs OS 8.5. And the key upgrade in OS 8.5 is of course the express widgets, which you see at the side here. So do they drastically change the way the car operates? Not really, but these are sort of like quick select buttons, so to speak. Makes it supposedly easier for you to reach certain menus or certain shortcuts that you might want to access. And then there's been some slight change in the way the climate menu has been arranged as well. It's a little bit more seamless, easier for you to access the climate control menu. So that's probably a good thing. Let me sync this up, turn on the air circulation so that we don't smell anything funky from the outside. Aside from that, the rest of the car, there are wireless charging pads here, cup holders here, of course the center console with all your menu select buttons, your iDrive system, your wheel here, and of course your drive selector. In the middle, there's a center cubby, not too big, probably will fit like some knickknacks here and there. What can you fit in here? You can fit a square tissue box. That's about it. Okay, let's jump in the bag and check out the rest of the car, because this is, after all, sort of like the benchmark of like family size luxury sedans. Let's go. Okay, people. So this is the rear of the BMW 520, and climbing in was rather easy, no weird angles to contend with, but I must say the footwell does feel a little bit deep, which is probably a good thing, which means that you actually have proper under thigh support. So on longer journeys, probably going to be a little bit more comfortable, because some cars that you see today, in an attempt to maximize interior space, they have actually made the seats a little bit more shallow, and the result of making the seats more shallow is that you do sit in a little bit of a fetal position, which is fine for short distances, but longer distances, you tend to get a little bit tired sitting in the car. But in any case, this car has proper seating as you would expect from a luxury sedan, so all is well and good. This driver's seat is in my regular driving position. I am 175 meters tall, and this is the amount of legroom that I have. So very decent amount of legroom. And weirdly enough, there are no back pockets here, which is actually fine. I mean, I don't think anybody really uses the back pockets these days, but the only problem is because because of the absence of a leather seat pocket, all you see is the black trim, which I don't know, looks a little bit cheap. I think it doesn't look as good, and there's this tendency for you to leave like prints or like dirt tracks onto this surface as well, because it is quite textured. So if your feet were to brush past, you are able to see. In fact, I can see some of the marks already from the previous users or people who have tested the car before. So that's probably something that I'm not so fond of, but minor issues. Now, I'm not sure if this is just something that happens in Singapore, but BMW Asia in Singapore have stopped speccing their cars with panoramic roofs. So in general, even higher end models like I think the one that the car that I remember, the X5, the facelifted X5, or the one that has been through the LCI life cycle impulse, even that didn't have a sunroof or panoramic roof. So not surprising that the 5 Series also does not have a panoramic roof. But the advantage is you do get a little bit more headroom in that sense. So I am seated quite upright and I still have a lot of headroom. If I were to take a more natural seating position, then I have even more headroom, as you can see. So pretty comfortable there. Being a rear wheel drive car, you still got a transmission tunnel here. So I guess that makes it a little bit harder for you to carry 3 passengers in the back. Not because there isn't enough room width-wise, but because the middle passenger would have to find a place to tuck their feet in, and chances are they're going to put 1 foot on each side. So 3 passengers in the rear, I think probably not such a great idea in a car like that. But in terms of rear passenger comfort, you've got aircon vents as well, and then you've got USB ports as well, so that your occupants can stay connected to their devices, although they really shouldn't, but they can if they want to. What I find quite strange though is that in the 5 Series, I would have expected to see climate controls here. So not just an aircon vent, but a temperature selection. So a separate climate zone, 3 zone maybe. But in this car, it's only 2 zones. So I'm not sure if that's always been intended or if that's one of the compromises BMW have sort of it's one of the compromises that BMW have had to take in an attempt to keep the cost of the 5 Series slightly lower or slightly more competitive. But in any case, you've also got the bronze bits here, more bronze bits. I think we're gonna say bronze bits a lot in this review. Very nice, very atas. I like it. But in any case, pretty standard rear cabin in that sense. ISOFIX points. The covers are actually color coordinated with the seat cover, so that's a nice touch. That's a point of luxury that I will point out, because most cars, the ISOFIX flip covers, they are just black, whatever the color your seat is. So this is nice, this is good. Alright, so with that, let's jump back into the driver's seat, because I think as a BMW, it is always going to be a driver's car. So let's go see how the car drives. Alright, so let's start up the car. Very silent starting up actually, and I think that's probably due to the 5 Series having a very high level of insulation, as expected from a 5 Series, always been the case. So to get some specifications out of the way before we head out on the drive, so the new BMW 520, of course this runs a 4-cylinder turbocharged. This is a standard B48 engine, but of course this is mild hybridized, so you do get a little bit of power from the mild hybrid drivetrain, and combined this is good for about 187 horsepower. 310 Newton meters of torque, and BMW says that this will get the car from 0 to 100 in a very respectable 8.1 seconds. Now, these figures don't sound like a lot, especially for a car that's this size. And in fact, I think power figures for the 520, whether you're looking at the G30 series or the F10 series, the 520s have always sat in this sort of power segment, about 180-ish horsepower. But then if you consider that the F10 was a smaller car, and of course the G30 was a slightly smaller car than this as well, then you'll be wondering if the same amount of power is actually enough. But because this new version is of course mild hybridized, let's take it out on the road and see how well it performs and whether it's actually enough. So right off the bat, what you can feel is that steering is actually pretty light in the 520, very similar to the i5. It's calibrated to be quite light. Personally, for a car this size, I would prefer steering weights to be a little bit heavier. I don't know, probably just because I'm used to how it feels like in my own F10. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It makes the car very easy to drive around town, but it does sometimes feel a little bit too light, in my opinion, and I think it does kind of cater to a slightly different demographic than it used to. Probably in the past, the 520 was probably purchased by people with, you know, a little bit more, who had a little bit more driver dynamics in mind. Probably, you know, preferred a car that was a bit more driver oriented. But as the car has grown throughout the years, I think the 520 is a lot more a luxury car than a performance car, or rather a driver oriented car. I mean, the 520 has never been a performance car per se. But yes, when you are accelerating out, and I'll show you in a bit, it's not a major deal, but the light steering does make the car feel a little bit more susceptible to you know, putting in, like, your steering inputs don't feel as accurate. But anyway, I don't want to harp too much on it because I think it's really a matter of getting used to. And truth be told, you know, after a day at the gym or after a workout, I can understand why people would like a lighter steering in general. So pickup's quite good, quite instant. You don't get any turbo lag, very minor bit. But car pushes off the line very well. And in fact, I think despite being a bigger car in general compared to say the F10 and the G30, because of the mild hybrid system, I feel like acceleration is actually a little bit more brisk in this car. And the engine note is quite decent as well. I mean, you don't really hear the engine note as much as you would in a 3 Series, for example, using a B48 engine. But I think that's really probably down to the fact that the insulation in the 520 is quite a little bit better. So if you are the sort of person that values high levels of insulation and therefore, you know, quietness, ride comfort, then I think this is a very good option to look at. So as you are cruising along, same thing, you don't really hear too much of the car. And in fact, you know, when we were at the lights earlier on, there were many moments where the engine actually sort of cut off due to the auto start stop. And I must say, you don't really feel like it's the engine is cut off. Like, if you're not really looking at your rev counter, there's a very good chance you're not going to realize this at all. So I think that's a job well done by BMW, because I've never been a fan of auto start stops, just because traditionally you tend to feel it a lot, and then the aircon becomes all wonky. You feel a little bit stuffy during the time that you are stopped. With this car, however, you don't really feel that as much. And also, I think the commendable part is when you do need the power to come back on, when you do need the engine to kick back into life, when you're about to move off, the startup is actually very seamless as well. So there's a very smooth transition where the engine kind of kicks back in and you also don't really realize it that it's gone. Of course, if you're the kind that's hypersensitive to these sort of things, if you really want to keep your engine on throughout the entire duration of your drive, you can always swap your car to a sports mode, which then will basically deactivate the auto start stop, which is a bit of a hack with modern BMWs actually. But of course, you know, in like with every other automaker, fuel efficiency is probably one of the key considerations today. So I think that's probably the reason they removed the auto start stop button altogether, especially on the hybrid models. So similarly, this does not have a auto start stop button. Sorry, I was just checking to make sure that there really isn't an auto start stop button. But in any case, I've been cruising along the highway for a while, probably about 70 kilometers per hour, and it's an extremely comfortable ride. The car feels exactly what you would expect from a BMW 5 Series. It's composed, it's very comfortable, and all this is done without having air suspension as well. So I think that's a plus point, because then you don't have that bit of kit to maintain as the car gets older. If you do need a little bit of power, let's see how the car does. So foot down, still a pretty satisfying sound. So obviously not as quick as something like the i5, which we reviewed very recently as well, but in a certain sense this feels a little bit more satisfying to drive because of the engine sound, and it's a good sound, you know. It's not a it's not a terrible sound like some of the more civilian spec cars produce. I think BMW engines have always sounded quite decent, but of course, whatever you have heard through the camera in the car is probably quite a lot less than what you will hear outside. So the car outside will probably be quite a bit louder, but because of the level of insulation that the 520 offers, you really don't feel it much in this, like inside the cabin of the car, which I guess is a good thing. Now, speaking about all those things, I think one of the things that come to my mind is that I think in older generations of 5 Series or 520s, or actually 5 Series in general, I think the aftermarket modifications, so to speak, have always been a thing with BMW cars in general, whether it's the 5 Series or the 3 Series. I think because the cars are quite driver oriented, it does attract a certain group of car enthusiasts to actually pick up these cars, and because they tend to look quite sporty in nature as well, a lot of the modifications that are done to the car are actually aimed at making the car look better, sound better, and actually even like make the car more powerful than it is. And I think that's always been the common theme with 5 Series cars or 3 Series cars in Singapore. But with this new one, it is quite a bit more luxurious. You know, from the onset, in its stock form, it's already quite luxe and quite glam. Sorry, let me just overtake this guy. So as you can see, I digress, but 187 horsepower, 310 Newton meters of torque, more than enough for Singapore roads, more than enough to get through slow bits of traffic along the way. Definitely no complaints about power, and I think, like I said, this is even more remarkable considering the fact that this is now a larger car, packing the same level of horsepower, but somehow the car feels more powerful. Is it really due to the mild hybridization being so good? Maybe, I don't know, but it will appear that that is the only variable at the moment. But anyway, back to the car, back to the whole thing. So I feel like this particular 5 Series or this generation of 5 Series is a lot more luxe, it's a lot more premium from its original stock form. So I don't really see how this is going to be a car that people are going to pick up aftermarket and modify, which kind of I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing that people don't do that anymore, but you know, I would say that in Singapore specifically, that has kind of been the characteristic of a 5 Series and a 3 Series. So it's kind of sad in a way as well, just to kind of imagine that this might be a car that, you know, will not see so many cool modifications down the line. Like in fact, even with the G30 generation, you saw a lot less drastic modifications. You know, body kit here and there, exhaust system, pretty much there. You know, people haven't really messed around too much with the rest of the car. But that's just a side note, something that I thought about. It's not really it's not necessarily a good or bad thing in relation to the car. But in any case, if you are in the market for a luxury sedan, I think you can't really go wrong with the 520 because this still drives very, very well. If you compare everything else in its segment at the moment. And what I do kind of like about the fact, or what I kind of like about the 520 is that it's still priced quite reasonably in a sense. So the list price of this 520 is probably in the middle, in the region of a mid 300,000, so about 350,000 thereabout. And of course, with your trade-in discounts, over trades and stuff like that, you probably get it down to maybe 330, 320, depending on the time and space, you know. But even at $350,000, I think this is quite a reasonable buy if you consider that other cars in a similar price point are probably not quite as luxurious or don't have such a rich pedigree. Not limiting the comparison to petrol cars or EVs, but just talking about cars that you can find in this price range, you'll probably be looking like an entry-level Mercedes electric car or like a Polestar 2, which of course is a lot more powerful, but no comparison in terms of the size and the level of refinement offered in the 520. In fact, we just attended the launch of the new Mercedes-Benz E-Class. Fantastic car, wonderful car as well. But that is quite a little bit more expensive because even in the base spec, that car is almost 400,000. So essentially, you're looking at, you know, the 5 Series and the E-Class have always been long time points of comparison. But if you really look at the current generations today, they are actually quite different in price. There's probably about 40,000 in difference between the two cars. Which of course, if you're looking at a car that is in $300,000, $400,000 region, that's really just like 10% or slightly more than 10% a price difference. But money is money, so you know, if you are a big fan of the 5 Series and you've tried it and tested it, and you feel like, hey, you know what, I actually like this car more than the E-Class, and it so happens to be 10% cheaper, then why not? You know, I think that's a really good deal, and I think potential buyers will definitely find that offers some level of value, so to speak. But in any case, if you have any comments about the new 5 Series, about the way it looks, about the way it feels, please leave them in the comments section below. I would love to hear your comments because as an F10 driver myself, a 5 Series driver, of course of an older generation, I do feel that the 5 Series today is quite a lot different from the 5 Series that I know. And I feel like it caters to a completely different market actually, a different type of person. But in any case, yes, put your comments in the comment section below. And if you have any questions about the car as well, about things that I didn't cover, please feel free to put them in the comment section as well. I would definitely answer them if they're not nonsensical. So no keyboard warrior stuff, guys. Yeah, if you got a genuine question, please put them in the comment section below. I'll be happy to answer them. And just a gentle reminder before we end off, if you are a driver in Singapore and you're thinking about selling your used car or consigning it for the best price possible, be sure to check out the link in our description box below, and through that link we'll be able to provide you the best possible quote and valuation for your used car, or help you to consign it for the best price possible, whichever you prefer. In fact, if you need insurance renewal for your car as well, if it's that time of the year, be sure to check out the other link in the description box, because we will also be able to help you get very, very, very competitive quotes through that link. It's all free to inquire, so if you need those services, please by all means check it out. If we're not the best price, you know, whatever. If we are, then at least we've done you a service there. And if not, as usual, please take care of yourself, stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.